what would you like to encourage women the most at doing today?
To stop trying to figure it all out and just let yourself receive, let yourself be supported, let the answers come to you rather than seeking to go find them.
Well, this is for women in midlife. Do you feel like that's your battle cry? Stop trying to figure it all out at once or desperately go after it. Well, I'm excited to get to chat today with Jessica Joins. And you're going to be learning about what does it mean to live your soul purpose? Why is it important for women, especially executives and C-suites, to live heart-centered and get in touch with themselves? And what is the journey that Jessica is helping women go on? Can't wait. This is Hillary Baggett with Hill Talks Momentum in Midlife Podcast. And the whole mission is so that you know that you're not alone. Sometimes we talk health, sometimes wealth, sometimes mindset. Whatever it is, after the age of 40, 50, 60, and beyond, we hope that you know that you are seen, loved, heard, and definitely not alone. And so often we are talking about your body, your mind, your spirit, or your business. And today I have the absolute honor and pleasure to welcome Jessica Joins. And she is the founder of the Women's Purpose Community, Great Alignment Right Away. She's the host of the Soul Purpose podcast. And that's what we're going to be talking so much about how she helps and supports women to find their soul purpose. So as the founder of the Women's Purpose Community, Jessica, and correct me if I'm wrong, you are all about personal growth for high-powered kind of C-suite women. And sometimes those words can kind of make people wonder. So a big welcome to you, and you can explain to us how you categorize the C-suite women.
Yeah. Well, first, thank you so much for having me on. I love what you're doing. I love everything that your show is about. You're bringing such a powerful message out to the world. So thank you for your service. The Women's Purpose Community, and I'll give a little bit of background just for those that might not be as familiar with some of the challenges that women in leadership face, but there's not a lot of focus and emphasis on them just having time to make time for themselves. So really focusing on their own consciousness expansion, really focusing on their personal growth, who they are, really helps empower all the kind of things you focus on at leadership, but it's a real gap in the marketplace. And when I was a member of the C-suite, it was something I was really craving. So I'm really happy to be able to serve in that role today.
Excellent. And you saw the need, you felt the need, and then you created to be part of the solution. So I love how your heart is just so open. So today we're going to talk about a few things, and I'll just let the listeners or the viewers know. If you're catching us on YouTube, if you're listening on your favorite podcast outlet, then make sure you're following so you don't miss future amazing guests like Jessica. So today we are going to be talking about what does it mean to find your soul purpose, and why it is especially important to women who are in the C-suite, who are executives at the highest level, going through all the pressures, the performance, the kind of scrutiny, and hopefully the moving forward. And what is it exactly that the journey is that you help these women to navigate? And then I think we'll wrap up all about heart-centered, because your heart is so big, and why it's so challenging and it's not just women who are C-suite. I dare to say all women really struggle with connecting with ourselves, body, mind, and spirit, and creating that space.
Yeah. Look, you're so dead on. It's really a human problem. And I just happen to serve this category of women because it's women I understand. I've been that woman. I am that woman in many ways. And I'll start with the way that I define soul purpose. And soul purpose to me is taking the highest expression of who you truly are and what you love and serving the world from that place. And I don't know about you, but when I grew up, my generation, I'm Gen X, like we very much approach the world when you make that decision in college, that is going to inform what you're going to do with your entire life from a place of survival and scarcity mentality. Like the world is hard. I just need to find something I'm good at to make money and survive. And then we're in this constant striving, survival energy, always going, not really happy because we didn't pick what we love, burnout, all these kinds of things where we see all the epidemic around the rates of burnout, the lack of health, all these things. So my way to serve and help tackle that, and I do it for women, no matter what your age, I did not understand the notion of purpose till I was 40. Okay. That was 8 years ago. And that it's never too late. The decision you're going to make with what you do every single day of your life is a sacred decision. And it should be about what you love and this authentic expression of you into the world. So when I work with women, sometimes it's total career shift. Like, for me, I was like, I'm 40. I'm going to now figure out what I want to be when I grow up because I didn't do that prior. And I've been miserable and unhappy ever since. Sometimes it's just helping them connect to a deeper sense of self, their true authenticity, the values, the things that define them so they can be happier and show up in their jobs and their leadership roles from a different place. So that's it in a nutshell. I hope that clarifies.
That was excellent. And it's like you're speaking to my soul right now. It's just a soul to soul conversation because I'm 53 and I still feel like, okay, I'm almost there. I'm on the cusp. Is it do I want to use what my first degree was in, which was design? Is it being an occupational therapist? Or is it something completely different? And that's what I would love for every listener to know, that you can choose something new and different at any moment.
Yeah, you can. And the whole key of it, and this took me forever to understand, is that it's not something for me to figure out. It's something for me to reveal to myself. And I reveal it through honoring my own resonance. So what I feel passion for, what I love, not necessarily knowing exactly where it's going to go or what it looks like, but honoring where the path of resonance takes me. Because when I get into thinking mind and I try to think my way into purpose, I try to figure it out. Well, thinking comes with the voice of fear and limitation, and that just blocks you every step of the way. And you just end up spiraling and cycling in this, kind of unhappiness state where you're never realizing the full truth of who you really are.
Okay. Well, that's really piqued my curiosity because I'm a chronic overthinker and I took some time before we started recording to just sit and be still and practice some self-acceptance. I've been reading some Thomas Merton on just being really centered. And so how do you guide people through that to get out of our heads and kind of into our bodies and present moment to connect with our soul?
Yeah. Well, the first thing, very simple, drop the notion that you're ever going to figure it out. It's not up to you, right? So, and whether it's like, let the universe, I don't know, the spirit of the earth, like whatever works for you on that front, start to be a guide as like a co-creator. And what you want to do, if you don't have it already, is have some type of quiet practice, whether that's meditation, whether that's journaling, but some type of self-reflective period so you can just retrain your brain to not always be thinking. But that's a fundamental practice that serves many things other than just soul purpose. But then what you want to do is really start asking your heart, like what you love. And you want to bring that question into play every day. And what happens is you start to get ideas, you start to get sparks, you start to have a vision for your life. Okay. And you start really bringing forth and bringing into fruition, like some kind of dream, some kind of thing that starts inspiring you. And again, like soul purpose, it is that deepest, like most heartfelt want, desire, dream in your heart, what happens is we don't even often let that come out. We right away say, oh, not possible, not possible. And we shove it down. So it's allow yourself to dream, allow yourself to get to the place where you have, like, if you could have anything in the world that you would get paid to do that you love, what would that be? Don't hold back. Like, write that down into a first person narrative and start to feel into the energy of it. And then from there, you go through a few practices that I have in my book, but you basically start to co-create that vision from a place of surrender and inspired doing.
Awesome. And you're referring to your book that's Dare to Believe, correct?
Yes. Yeah. My book is Dare to Believe. It's Dare to Believe 12 Lessons for Living Your Soul Purpose. I never had planned to write a book, and a little background on my effort on this. I spent a good 10 years trying to figure out how to get out of my former career, which was corporate marketing, which I spent 18 years in, and I was not really ever fulfilled the whole time because I hadn't stepped into my soul purpose. So for a long time, I was like, how do I figure this out? How do I find a way out of this? How do I do something that makes me happy? So it was a lot of pain and struggle, and using the tools that are available mainstream, whether, skills assessment, career assessment, personality tests, which were all still anchored in the survival scarcity mentality as much as the world is. So that wasn't providing me the answers and the solutions I needed. So I went back to my spiritual practice. I've always been a spiritual seeker, studying a lot of ancient wisdom traditions. And I really started to look at those and look for answers there, teachings of people like Michael Beckwith. And it was great principles, great teachings there. But I still beg the question, okay, but what do I do with this? How do I ground it down and make it a little bit more practical? So I started creating my own ways from my own inner knowing to take these ancient wisdom principles and put a practical application to them. Anyway, so when I did this, I was able to step into my purpose, and I felt like, wow, I discovered something. I got to put this in a book. So that's what the book is. It's really the 12 lessons and the step-by-step guide of how to take a spiritual approach to realizing purpose in your life for the more linear, practical thinker, which I innately am.
I so appreciate you sharing, because when we share our struggles and our journey, then people can say, oh, I don't need to be intimidated by how they're projecting or presenting themselves, whether it's professionally or personally or spiritually. And sometimes to be intimidated just by beauty. And if you're listening on the podcast, you do need to just be able to see Jessica's beauty and glow. So pop over onto the YouTube channel at Women's Midlife Network, just so you can see how she's exuding. The joy is coming out her pores, y'all. And it's easy sometimes to get, to feel intimidated by how we see someone else. And I was just rushing off the phone with a phone call with my son right before. And I thought, no, because here's where I am right now. This is today. And I'm going to keep going forward and enjoy this conversation of these golden nuggets of wisdom that you shared. So thank you. Wow, that's really good.
And I so relate. And I think, I always say I've never been in a man's head. So I don't know if this is true for men, but I know it's for women, in the women's purpose community. We're all in her head. Oh my God, she's so great. Our own imposter syndrome. And it's the hilarious thing. We're all thinking the same thing. We all have the same story going on. It always cracks me up because I definitely do too. Yeah.
We do. And sometimes it's noticing, someone's jewelry or makeup or clothing or their height or their shoes or, their dog or what their background looks like or how successful they seem to be. So how do you bring that down for C-suite women who are really exuding success, at least from the visual perspective? How do you make this something that they can be vulnerable to get in touch with and then implement in their daily life?
Yeah. Well, and as you alluded to earlier, we really focused on building heart-centered relationships. And what that really means is even though it's a community for what I'll call high-powered women, and again, that's only because when I bring women together, it's helpful if they're living for the kind of work that we do, a similar experience. So they get like, oh yeah, I've been there. I'm also in, a job in the corporate setting, a mom and trying to do all these things. So there's a kind of baseline of things in common and shared experience. But I always say, like, once you're in the community, we drop every label and title at the door, i.e. ego at the door. So no, I'm on this board, no introducing yourself by the things you've achieved. And instead you come into the women's purpose community and you start to connect from your heart space and talk about who you are at a soul level. What are the adjectives that describe you? What are your biggest fears? What's the hardest thing you've ever done? What are you really scared about? And we start sharing and connecting from this place of vulnerability, of soul self versus ego self, that I help facilitates that and opens it up. And, I will say it's like, I've been a part of other communities and, like people will show up almost like in their pajamas for a call and like nobody's blinking, like that's kind of how comfortable we've all become with one another. But yeah, we drop all those layers of masks and identity right at the door and right from the very start. And I think that's what makes it helpful to be able to connect in that way.
Oh, I love that so much. And I think you have a very unique model, if I recall correctly, and please do correct me.
Yeah.
I think you said people commit for a year so they
Yes.
can dig in and go on the journey. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah. The time length isn't, from what I understand, that unique, but it's more about what we do in that year that's unique. But yeah, it's a year-long commitment. And that's because that's what it really takes in many ways to be able to dive in and build the type of relationships that these women are seeking. So as part of that, and what I love about it is every woman, we're a community of about 50 or so women, but every woman's put in a group with 6 other women, so 7 total. And they're with that group of women for one whole year via a 2-hour coaching session per month where they go very deep on any topics we're focused on in the community across personal growth and wellness, and just connect with one another, again, in this heart-centered, vulnerable way. So they really get to know one another beyond the surface level. And that happens pretty quickly. But when you're talking about working on the topics we work on, shifting your consciousness, that's something to really see and experience what's possible. It does take some linear time. Yeah.
Well, absolutely. And I like the specifics because so often people will say, oh, I'm going to be in a group of 50. How is that going to help me? But no, you're very intentional, which I'm not at all surprised getting to know you, that having those small groups of nurturing and safe spaces so that the safety is there and then people can grow faster because once you create that and foster that safe space to then go inside and go deep to allow that soul purpose to come out.
Yeah. Yeah,
So,
absolutely. And it, things do take some linear time with that. And yeah, we really proudly own that it's not a leadership development community. It's not. It is solely, personal growth, self-actualization, wellness. There's a number of different words for this. It's like choose your word. And proudly so. And I will say that wasn't necessarily always the case. I made a commitment this year to, boldly talk about what we're doing. For a while, because of the nature of the paradigm and nature of the corporate world, and in women wanting in part to get this funded by their companies, how to kind of toe this line. But the good news is that there's so much research out there that shows that women leaders really need this focus on like whole self development is what it's called. Strategies for life balance, opportunities to really prioritize themselves, because as we saw during COVID, like they are still primary caretakers. That's why, a million women left the workforce during COVID. So these kinds of things matter and there is an ROI.
oh my goodness, I love so much, especially when you can bring in numbers for people to realize that a million women left the workplace during COVID. And it kind of brings me back to something you said earlier, that our generation as Gen X are really, we were kind of told that you can have it all and therefore you need to do it all. And then you need to be everything to everyone and all at once.
Yeah.
And the pressure is crushing us into anxiety, depression, you said burnout.
Yeah.
I think, and your head is nodding. So for the listeners on just the podcast, that, we're just seeing each other. And this is one you just need to go and watch the YouTube video. And, here's a little hack, put it on 1.5% on speed. And then you can be listening to it. And then if there's a nugget that just resonates with you, then you pause. But it will help you get through so much more kind of content and education and support. That's what we're trying to just let women know. There are supports out there for you, and depending on what level in life and where you are. Right?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. No, I think between, you can do it all, the lean in, all of that. I mean, there was a lot of backlash because, there are so many hours in the day, and there are choices to make, and it's complicated. And I definitely don't have all the answers, but I know that, we are running ourselves ragged as a nation, men are too, right? From the, addiction to consumption to always doing. One of our retreat themes, not this last year, because we also, as part of the community, have in-person retreats. 2 years ago, the theme we worked on was my worth isn't what I produce.
Right. Let's say that again in case.
My worth isn't what I produce. And so what I try to really help is the consciousness around this and addressing that, because I don't have all the answers. And the paradigm is broken in many ways. Like I exited the matrix because, I was also like, oh my God, I'm not finding the solutions I need within the system. So, but it's just, helping people, I think, as we collectively help people surrender their addiction to always doing and achieving, or at least coming back into harmony and balance with themselves within that, with nature, all these other things, we might actually be able to shift the paradigm in some ways, which ultimately I think is what needs to happen.
It is what needs to happen. And I love that you have the vision of how to support women and nurture them through this and navigate through this to get to that heart-centered purpose that we've been talking about. Is there anything else about the heart-centered that you wanted to share?
I think when we talk about heart-centered, it's something that often gets confused is like, am I being loving? They take it to the action. And I'm talking about state of consciousness. So state of consciousness is really simple. Are you believing the truth in your heart, or are you believing the fear in your mind? Where is your consciousness? So are you identified with the fear in your mind, that inner critic, that inner naysayer, the ego mind, false evidence appearing real, moment to moment? Are you there and listening to what it's saying? Or are you in your heart? And you can tell it's a feeling. If I'm in my heart, I am joyful. The world is full of possibility. I'm present and in the now. If I'm identified with the voice of fear in my mind, I'm thinking about the future. I'm in the past. I'm in anxiety. I'm in worry. I'm in control in some way. And it's a moment to moment choice. And really, that's the foundation of what we're talking about. So when you start to anchor to that heart center, so much is revealed to you, so much possibility, so much that you were just missing because you were trapped in whatever story in your mind. There's a book called The Worry Cure, and I forget the exact stats, but it's like an obscene amount. 85% of the thoughts we have a day are negative fear-based thoughts, and the vast majority of which never come to fruition. Like, we're all insane. Trapped in our minds. The shift in consciousness is when you start witnessing those thoughts, not thinking they're facts, and really reorient to living from your heart space as a state of consciousness.
Wow, there was so much richness in there. Let me see if I can unpack it and make sure I understood it. So we're not talking about feelings and happiness and choose joy. We're talking about really feeling that truth in your heart, kind of that agreement, alignment. Yes, this is who I am. My body's in agreement. My stomach's not in knots. My throat is not closing up tightly. My shoulders are not up at my ears. And you said to make sure that we're coming from that place in the present moment and not the fear in our head.
Yeah.
And I like how you said the fear is false evidence appearing real.
Yeah. Yeah. That acronym. Yeah.
And the negative bias, the psychologists are always talking about it and doing the studies of that we will believe the negatives. And that's why positive self-talk, affirmations, rewiring our brains, breaking through those codes and that mean girl stuff that we were raised with, and we don't even realize it's there. And that's why it's so important to just make sure that people can know that the more we speak positively, affirming ourselves, and it's not just the I am smart, I am kind, I am courageous. It's really believing it of that I am effective at everything I do. I can draw and attract success and deep joy in each moment, and kind of helping people go a little deeper.
Yeah, absolutely. I always say like it can feel overwhelming. Start meditating. If you don't meditate, it'll start doing it for you, help you start becoming more heart conscious than brain, mind conscious. The other thing I say is just stop believing the voice of fear in your head. Stop believing in it. You're identified with it if you're believing in what it's saying is true.
Ooh, ooh. Oh, you just spoke that to me right there. It was just kind of like a positive dart to the heart of like, yes, let's connect with more of this and less of this, right?
Yeah.
And I was pointing to my heart with more of the heart and less of the head. So super important.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Well, I think it's amazing, Jessica, that people can reach out to maybe join the Women's Purpose community is about to open for this.
Yeah, absolutely. We kick off new groups in during February and then again in July, but any time is a good time to reach out. That's womenspurposecommunity.com, one word. And yeah, if you're a female leader, we would love to talk to you for sure.
Excellent. And where are your socials? Where is it easiest to kind of find you?
Yeah, most of the work I do, what I post on social is on Instagram. That's Jessica L. Joines, Joines. And I also do a fair amount on LinkedIn, and I have a YouTube page.
Okay, wonderful. Well, I learned so much. I just want to finish with this. You and I are not supposed to be figuring it out. We are supposed to take time to pause, reflect, breathe, and allow kind of the answers to come up, maybe from our hearts, our souls, depending on the belief system. Oh my goodness, let's get out of this scarcity and survival mode so that we can get into that flow of self-actualization. Can sound really crazy, but it's not. It's Maslow's hierarchy of needs of figuring out your greatest purpose in life. It's the David Brooks second mountain. It's knowing how you make an impact and leave a legacy in the world. And it's living out of that joyful spark and energy that just keeps us going.
Yeah, it's what we're here to do. We are here to awaken to self-actualize. So it is what we are here to do.
Oh, well, I think that's a great place to finish up. Jessica, thank you so much. Appreciate you.
Oh, thank you.
Oh my goodness. And I hope people will reach out and look for the Women's Purpose Community.com. Reach out, check out her Soul Purpose podcast. She is the host of that. And, you might just need to grab the book, Dare to Believe. If you dare. I mean, she's almost like double dog daring us to go out and get that book. Because once we are, some people really do respond well to that word. Oh, I dare you. I dare you to believe that you could be something beyond what you've ever imagined.
Thank you so much for having me on. It's been a pleasure to be here.
I appreciate it. I'm so grateful that you're listening, that you're sharing, that you're writing reviews. and it just helps the podcast grow. So many people are surprised that I'm still doing this after coming into my 4th year, but I love highlighting stories and supporting other women. Have a good one. Music brought to you by March of the Dragonflies by Belmont Club. And quick disclaimer, this is not intended to be medical or healthcare advice. Please consult with your physician, osteopath, or healthcare provider before choosing what's right for you. Again, I will not give financial advice either, but I can point you in the directions of the trusted professionals that you can listen to. This is Hillary Baggett with Hill Talks Podcast. Thanks so much for listening. And as always, I hope you hear the love.